in a lot of practices, especially those that are like well established, the people who are working in the practice have a personal relationship with the patient.
Hmm.
And so sending something that's automated feels maybe could feel like cold or distant and not have that personal touch. And I've heard that before, and I think it's a valid concern. But I kind of look at it the flip side and think, okay, if we're able to automate that part of the communication with the patients that aren't in the practice, what does that do? It frees up time and our like attention and awareness to be focused on being present for the patients who are in that day.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry look like to you? I'm Katie Polson, a dental hygienist and your host. Welcome to another episode of Growth in Dentistry. I'm Katie Polson, and we are continuing our conversation on getting paid. And we're talking about outstanding AR today. But before we get started, I wanted to just reach out and say thank you to all those people that have rated and reviewed this podcast. And those of you that have joined our Facebook Dental Intelligence community to come and talk about data and dentistry. It's a bunch of nerds up in there. It's a good time. And I also just want to say that if you've listened to every episode, bless you, because we are on number 50 today. And for those of you who have ever done, we're just talking, and I'll introduce my guest here, but he's had a podcast on his own. And any of you that's ever done a podcast, know that if you can get to number 50, it's kind of a big deal. So we're excited over here. This is very, very good news.
Very cool.
Yep. But thank you for any of you, my family who's listened to this podcast. That's pretty much it. Anyway, well, so again, we're talking about outstanding AR today. What a great topic for number 50, isn't it? It's so sexy.
Very important.
Yeah. So so this is that voice, if you're just listening, is Dan Larson. He's the VP of product management here at Dental Intel, and we're very, very lucky to have him. He's brought a lot of great things to that department and also to our product, which is the most important piece of Dental Intel, is the actual product. So we're excited to have you here. Give us a little bit of a rundown on who Dan Larson is. How'd you get here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I really my entire career has been in technology and specifically in dental. I started in 2004 as a temp in a support team taking phone calls. And back then, if you would have asked me like how long would I be in this industry, I probably would have answered in like hours or days. I didn't know anything about dentistry. I didn't know anything about technology. But it's been a fun ride. I joined the Dental Intel team in October of 2021, and I've loved it. I've been doing product for the last 10 years or so, and just love understanding like what the problems are that our customers are facing and how can we build a solution that's going to make their life a little bit better.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about one of those solutions today a little bit later. But for those of you that have loved Dental Intel, it's thanks to this guy, especially going forward, and all of the people behind him, that really we have some very exciting changes coming up with our product, and it's a good time to be on the team of Dental Intel, but it's even better to be a good time to be a customer of Dental Intel. So it's really exciting stuff. Okay, so we're talking about accounts receivable solutions. What does that mean? But why is that important? Because I think a lot of practices that we've gone back and forth about what does accounts receivable mean, and why is it important to a dental practice or owner? So from the product side and why you guys are building it, like what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that with most businesses, having an AR solution is important. But with dentistry, it's like particularly complicated because so many practices rely on insurance. And anyone who's worked in this industry knows that it's a real challenge for practices because in so many cases patients don't end up paying at time of service. So then all of a sudden this AR process, your AR solution becomes super important part of like your cash flow and how you're supporting your business. So I think again, like in dentistry, AR is super important. And having a solution that's going to help you stay on top of that and do it in an effective way is really, really important.
Yeah, because for most people, if I would imagine their solution, if it's not technology driven, is your front office
lady has an Excel spreadsheet on her or a
Right,
sticky
right.
note or like in a notepad, and she's writing down the claims that she's gotten and figuring out what the difference is and then what the invoice, and that's archaic, but like,
Yeah.
and most practices are advanced beyond there, but um
Yeah,
like,
you're
yeah,
exactly right.
yeah.
Like what's interesting is like not only does insurance make it complicated because after service is rendered, but if we could like rewind that all the way back and say like, well, why aren't patients paying at time of service? And from my experience, I'd be curious what yours is. It seems like it's because we don't have a lot of like confidence in insurance and patient
Exactly.
portion.
Yeah.
And so then we get in the situation, it's like, well, I don't want to overbill the patient. I don't want
Mhm.
to underbill. So
Mhm.
we're just going to wait.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden you're like building up all of this AR. So it's like, if we kind of reverse that back and try to go down to like, what's the root of the problem? In my opinion, a lot of times it's comes from, well, we have a lot of patients who have insurance and we don't have a lot of confidence in what insurance is going to cover. And so out of
Mhm.
courtesy or, trying to do the right thing by the patient, the practice is put into a difficult situation a lot of times.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. And it's a lot easier to have have the conversation of the bill coming after as opposed to them paying and then having it's times when you think that you've got it figured out, the patient pays, right? Even if
Right.
even if you've pre-authorized, the patient pays,
Yeah.
and then
Insurance exception.
insurance, yeah, right. And then
minimum age,
right,
downgrade.
whatever it is, and
missing
then you
toothpaste.
have to send another bill to that patient.
Yeah.
And those are conversations that is like high conflict.
Yeah.
Your staff is not trained to deal with that kind of conflict.
Maybe I was just here last week. I paid
Yeah.
you $25. What do you mean I owe 50 more?
Right. It's just it's a nightmare, and I don't blame practices for doing that, but you kind of put yourself as like this, like you're like the loan now essentially
Yeah.
to these patients.
Exactly.
And now you're on the back end of being like a loan shark trying to collect all of this outstanding AR. And I mean, we have practices. I looked, we've pulled reports on people that have had outstanding AR. I mean, some people have, on a good end, they have, $50,000 to $100,000 of AR, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of
It's a ton.
outstanding.
Especially like
Yeah.
if the average practice is somewhere in the, and it probably depends on a lot of factors, but maybe if you're in the 800,000 range for like annual, production, an eighth of your total revenue for the year is in AR.
Yeah.
You've provided a service
Mhm.
and you haven't been paid yet. So it's a big
And
problem.
you've got your treatment coordinator collecting on that, who's also doing 15 other jobs.
Right. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And is probably, who knows, underpaid. I don't know. But like there's this whole thing we was expecting. So we're going to move into automation, which is why we're really excited to talk about this today, because you can automate your AR, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
Yeah. So go down that little, like, what does automating your AR mean?
Yeah. I think that if we look at like the entire AR solution and the whole process, right? It starts back with like what you talked about around making sure that patients are verified with their insurance, right? They still have the same employer. And if we start all the way back at that part of the process,
That's
when I think about AR, I think about that whole
Mhm.
workflow, because anything that happens at the top of that process affects what happens at the end, right?
Yeah.
So if we have a patient
100%.
come in, we haven't done the eligibility, and it's a big procedure, then all of a sudden day of, we're scrambling trying to figure out, are they still covered? Is it a different plan? So it starts all the way back there. And I think those pieces, if you kind of walk that through pre-authorization, claim, attachments, right? That's all part of the AR solution. But if we kind of get to past services rendered, and then we're looking at, all right, we have a patient balance, what are we going to do to automate that process? Because even just that section of the whole like workflow in an office is a lot of effort.
Mhm.
And so I think that automating your AR process is important, because what we talked about with the numbers, right? If a practice has $100,000 in AR, having one person go through and like manually contact all those patients, it's a way to do it. It's also a very expensive way to do it.
Mhm.
And so I think that's why automation is important. It's like, how are we going to connect with these patients in an effective way that, in a way that they want to be communicated with? It's also going to be efficient for the practice. So I think when you look at automating your AR solution, it needs to start with what are we doing for insurance verification and that the whole insurance side of it. And then for patient portions after, what are we doing to automate that process? And then how can we look at the data and the analytics like holistically to understand what's happening? If I have 100,000 in AR, how much of it is insurance? How much of it is patient? How successful are my campaigns to reach those patients? I think you kind of have to look at that entire picture.
Yeah, that's really good advice, because I think when we think of AR, so many of us just think about the outstanding balance after the patient
Right.
has left and insurance is paid. So it really is important to think about the entire life cycle of the patient. I think a lot of times people get caught up in automation, as somehow the automation has turned into this like negative word almost for a lot of people in healthcare, because they're worried that it takes like the human aspect out of what we can provide, and us being in healthcare, we're so like just patient focused that
Yeah.
that can be scary.
We're here to take care of people.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
guess, what do you have to say maybe about that, about it being?
I'm glad you brought that
Yeah.
up because I've heard that a number of times too. And it makes sense. And I think that in a lot of practices, especially those that are like well established, the people who are working in the practice have a personal relationship with the patient. And so sending something that's automated could feel like cold or distant and not have that personal touch. And I've heard that before, and I think it's a valid concern. But I kind of look at it the flip side and think, okay, if we're able to automate that part of the communication with the patients that aren't in the practice, what does that do? It frees up time and our like attention and awareness to be focused on being present for the patients who are in that day. Because I
Right.
think those are the experiences. It's like
Mhm.
the one-to-one in-person interactions is like where we can really build the relationship with the
Yeah.
patient. And we have that ability by automating the other processes for the patients who aren't in the practice today.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how you mentioned that, because it really, the patients remember and recommend their dental practice based off of the experiences they have in the practice, not typically the fact that they sent a reminder 2 days, 2 times in one day or whatever, because that
Yeah.
was a glitch. So that's not something they're going to like leave their dental practice for mostly. If they
Right.
do, you don't want them in your practice.
Right.
but
Some patients are more difficult than
yeah,
others.
right. but really, when James Grover was on here from Dental Intel as well, we were talking about this. And I think it's really important to bring up again that this is like you said, where patients want to be contacted, right? People, I think we live in a day and age, even the older generation,
Mhm.
they want to be contacted. Nobody wants to talk on the phone anymore.
Right.
So I think you are hesitant to like be so, I guess, cold or distant with your messaging, but really it's it's how they want to be communicated with anyway.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I think if you consider what are your patients doing 8 to 5, they have jobs and they have other things. And so automating those reminders in a lot of cases is what they prefer.
Yeah.
And it's not because they don't want to talk to you. They
Yeah.
want to, something that's going to be convenient. And again, I think they appreciate the presence of the team members when they come in for their visit.
Yeah. Well, so obviously, I mean, those of you who are listening, you know that this is a podcast by Dental Intelligence, and there are a lot of other solutions out there that are payment solutions.
Mhm.
And many of you might even, who are listening, might be customers of these companies. But Dental Intel has gone about it in a different way because we have the ability to using our data. And so let's talk a little bit about what Dental Intel's, it's called payments, but it's really what it is an accounts receivable solution from start to finish. So
Yeah.
let's get into what that looks like and how we tried to solve it with our product.
Yeah, that's a great question. I joined the team in October, so I take
Yeah,
zero credit
that's
for
okay.
building this. But one of the things I was really excited about as I, got to dig into the product with customers and with the team members was seeing like how much attention has been given to, like we were talking about automation a second ago, automating those campaigns and also the retries on those campaigns. So, for example, if we have a campaign set up to, send a payment request to Katie, and we try to send it over email, and then the next time we try over text, those retries are automatically built in. And so we're able to connect with the patient on the channel that's most convenient for them, right?
Mhm.
And in a lot of cases, we're going to be able to show the success of that. Here's your campaign. Here are all the patients that we were able to contact on your behalf, to help you get paid and to help, bring in that AR that the practice has earned. But we also recognize that we're not going to be able to solve 100% of the cases with automation. And so it was really cool to see the team built was this idea, linking into our follow-ups
Yes.
functionality.
Mhm.
So saying, if we think about this like the AR, like a funnel, we say, all right, we're going to get as much as we can through the automated process. But then at the bottom of the funnel, if there are some patients who don't respond to that automated message for whatever reason, then it's automatically putting those into a follow-up for a team member. So we're being like most effective with their time. I thought it was one of the really cool things that the team was able to provide to customers, and I see it making a huge difference in the
Yeah.
practices I
Yeah,
talk to.
but and I want to clarify for those of you that maybe don't know much about Dental Intel's follow-ups, but follow-ups is essentially taking all of those post-it notes that your front desks use to follow up on accounts receivable,
Yeah.
on calling back for for a cleaning or whatever it is, and it creates the tasks for them inside Dental Intel, and they can just they can create a follow-up on 2 days from now to follow up with Jean about her unscheduled balance. And then if Jean doesn't answer, they can again push that follow-up up 2 weeks from now. When they log into Dental Intel, it will pop up. And what Dan is saying is that at the end of a campaign, so a campaign would be you send a text message for Jean's balance, and then you send it 2 days later. It sends automatically, right?
Yep.
2 days later, and you get to choose and fully customize
Yeah.
the wording.
Yep.
and how often you want those sent. And at the end of that campaign, if you say, okay, we've reached out so many times, it's going to create a follow-up for your front office team member to just call Jean, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing else out there like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recall a
Yeah.
conversation we had, and it was a family member of yours who maybe uses
Yeah.
Dental Intel, and
Yeah.
felt like one of the most powerful parts of the product
is
is
follow-ups.
follow-ups. Yeah.
Yeah. My brother, and those of you that listen to the podcast know, I mean, I talk about my brother all the time, and he's actually the one that turned me on to Dental Intel. And as a provider, I mean, I have other things that I love most, but he's like, you could take everything away, but follow-ups is like the best thing ever.
Keep that in.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, but that really does make a huge difference. So being able to follow up and have the team member call, as opposed to just letting it after 3 times of texting,
Yeah. Fall through the cracks,
yeah.
and we're not sure who has the ball on
Yeah.
finishing up this particular project. I remember hearing a customer say that, like, through these campaigns and things tying into follow-ups, they felt like Dental Intel had their back. They didn't have to worry. They knew that process is going to work, and then it was going to be assigned to team members in the places where patients needed an extra reminder.
Yeah, really good. And so payments has also the ability to do single payment requests or Apple Pay, and these are all new things. But I think the thing that really sets it apart is because we have access to all this data, we find the outstanding AR.
Yeah.
And then and you can just work off of that one workflow, and then set up that payment or that patient into that campaign. Instead of just sending these like single paid text requests,
Right.
which is what most people are using out there. So it really is a fantastic product. I want to back up. I kind of want to work through like that first bit too, because I know we didn't talk about this in the pre-show, but you said something about getting insurance verified. And although we don't do anything for insurance verification, we do have the opportunity to with Modento. For those of you that aren't on Modento, I'm sorry for you. Because it really is a fantastic product. But to be able to send your forms and texts ahead of time
Yeah.
and get that in, because I know how many times patients show up and their insurance isn't right.
Right.
And then, oh, we can't see you because your insurance or whatever. But like having that,
And then your schedule gets thrown off. They're 10 minutes
yes,
behind.
yeah, having that done ahead of time via text and
Mhm.
having all of that information go right into where it needs to go is a huge thing.
Yeah.
In terms of, when you said that, I was like, I didn't even think about Modento's forms being a part of this payments automation piece of it, which it is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we could talk about automation all day, really.
It's true. There are a lot of tasks to be done. for
Yes,
sure.
there are, and it's and there's a lot of people that have used our payment solution and I've really loved it, and we're excited. In the coming months, there's going to be lots of good changes with it. So really awesome things coming down the pipe. So if you're listening, it's going to be good things. But we asked the same question to everybody because this is a question that means something to everybody. And you being on the tech side of dental, I'm excited to hear what your answer is. But what does
Yeah.
growth in dentistry mean to you?
It's a great question. I think for me, it's been 18 years that I've been able to work with dental practices, and I think the thing that comes to mind for me when I consider growth in dentistry is uh, advancing things for practices so that our customers, dental professionals, don't have to choose between giving great patient care, having a successful business, and having like time for their family. Right now, I think there, a lot of practices I've talked to over the years where you can just tell in the conversation that they're tired and that like the
Mhm.
weight of carrying the business, caring for their patients, that they're places where they feel like they're having to make trade-offs.
Yeah,
And growth in dentistry to me means they don't have to make that decision anymore. They don't have to make that trade-off between great patient care, successful practice, and working 100 hours a week.
yeah,
So I think that's the goal. And that's what gets me excited about coming to work every day, is solving those problems. I think like, how can we help our customers be in that situation where they feel like I'm giving amazing patient care, really caring for the people on my team, and the patients come to see me. I have a thriving, successful, stable practice, and I'm able to do that in an amount of time that I actually have like life outside of work.
yeah.
That's what it means to me.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. And I hope that for those of you that are listening that maybe don't know anything about dental until or our values, like that really is uh, everyone here. That's the goal of the company,
Yeah.
is to just have the back of the dental practice owner and help them achieve whatever growth means to them. That was
Yeah.
such a good answer, Dan.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, this has been Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast number 50.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining. You can find this podcast and other great information on dentalintel.com. For those of you that are interested in joining up or signing up or looking at payments and see how that has an effect in your office, you can go to dentalintel.com and watch and schedule a demo. And one of our fabulous sales people, I'm sure, love to walk you through it. And that's it. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you for marketing department for all of their work on this podcast. I'm Katie Polson. Keep growing.